My name's Tracy Miles. I'm a gynae cancer nurse specialist working in the West Country. I also work for the Eve Appeal, Gynecology Cancer Research Charity. I work with NHS England as a genomics legacy practitioner. So all this means that I look after women predominantly through their cancer journey. So that's taking them from diagnosis to treatment. That might be surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or a mixture of all of those treatments, and help to explain to patients exactly what the treatment is, why they're having it, their side effects, and what it'll mean to them. So to be very honest, when I first heard the word biosimilars, I didn't know what it meant. That's because that hadn't come in my education when I was a nurse in training some 37 years ago. And actually, we hadn't had an awful lot of information on the clinical floor. So it didn't mean anything to me. So I did a little bit of reading. And I guess I made the analogy of a biosimilar along the vacuum cleaner story. This will make sense. So for example, I always call a Hoover. And then along came Henry and Dyson. And I actually learnt to know that those products were as good, if not better. So that's the kind of analogy I made. Sounds crazy, but it's something that I often use for patients. However, with biosimilars, I wasn't quite sure that they might be as good as the initial drug that they copycat. So over the years, my perception of biosimilars has changed dramatically. I guess the leading thing is actually meant that my patients have a bigger armoury or recipe book from the oncologist of drugs that they can use. So no longer do I wonder if the Cancer Drugs Fund is going to mean this patient can or can't have the drug. I now know that due to cost or lack of cost, the impact on the oncologist's prescription pen, or keyboard now these days with prescribing, is a lot different. So actually my perception is that biosimilars are a good thing. It means there is a lot more out there for my patients for treatment. I don't have cancer, I haven't had cancer, lucky me. I do get migraines, which is a bit miserable. And I panic when I get a migraine, so I get my prescription drug called Imigran from my GP. It comes in a pink and white box and is a round tablet. Holy moly, I went to pick up my prescription the other day. It came in a green and white box and it was a triangle of a tablet. Nocebo effect crept in. I was concerned that this drug was not going to work. I was concerned that when I got a migraine, I would not be able to escape from it with my normal shaped drug, and that effect would actually filter through to my consciousness. Luckily, I had trust in my GP and her prescription ability, took the drug, I didn't have the migraine, no nocebo effect. However, I do recognise I was on the edge of that. So that's something we need to be cognizant of as clinicians when we're prescribing, that we explain to a patient if the box is going to be a different colour, if the tablet's going to be a different shape, if the fluid in the drip's going to be a different colour. And as a patient, we need to feel empowered to say, it's not the same box, doctor, tablet's a different shape, will it still work? Have confidence, it's a two-way conversation. So I guess when we look at the treatment profile for patients, there is a change with biosimilars being in the medicine cupboard, if you like. It does mean that the oncologist and the pharmacist have a lot more that they can offer to patients. So it actually means in the patient consultation that the patient will need an explanation of what a biosimilar is. Because patients will read patient information booklets that don't change, iterations do change over the years, but not that dramatically. So they will see the name of a drug that they will know and believe and trust will cure them, potentially, we hope, will help to lengthen their life, or may help with side effects. If you're reading a new name or you're prescribed a new name and it's not in your information book from Macmillan, for example, you may worry. And we need to support patients and explain to them that the drugs are exactly the same, just a different name, different shape, different colour, different box. I think we are learning more about the language of describing drugs, so I'll explain. Back in the day when I first started as a clinician, we had chemotherapy, which patients often think of as a poison, and they're quite right, it's a cytotoxic drug. And then there were drugs that had side effects due to chemotherapy, so we would give them drugs to mitigate that. And that was really the common language, chemotherapy and drugs to manage side effects. And as we've evolved as clinicians, we've learned about novel therapies, we've learned about immunotherapy, we've learned about molecular and targeted agents. We hear in social media and on the news about personalised medicine, and our patients are beginning to learn that language too. So I think there's a really positive future for biosimilars. We're learning the language, patients and clinicians together, actually a lot more closely because of social media and because of the general media. So I think there's a confidence building there. And the big thing to remember is the cost is reduced. So the generation that couldn't have that drug before is likely to be able to receive it now. So biosimilars are new to patients, sometimes brand new to patients, new to clinicians, but we're becoming more familiar with using them. I think what clinicians need to remember is that the first time a patient encounters a biosimilar, he or she may not understand what that means. We need to explain in very layman or woman's terms what that means, and to give the patient confidence that a biosimilar is produced in a safe and robust way. And the reason we're going to prescribe that drug, which will look different to the drug that they took last week, different colour box, different shaped tablet, is because we feel confident it's going to have exactly the same positive effect for the patient. Patients don't always trust biosimilars. Similar to the experience that I must admit that I had initially until I learnt about the rigorous and robust process that pharma companies producing biosimilars have to go through. I wasn't sure. So patients will say, am I a guinea pig for a new research drug? Big question. They often say that. If it's cheaper, it can't work as well, can it, Tracy? Am I getting a cheaper version? And when I tell them, no, they're not a research guinea pig. Yes, it is cheaper, and it's simply describe the process as to why it's cheaper. Are you sure, Tracy? So I need to give patients confidence and actually explain to them the robustness of how the drugs are produced and the licensing that they go through. It is quite a big ask for some patients. So looking into the future, I think biosimilars are very much the way to go. And why? It's the cost effectiveness. We are cash strapped in our wonderful NHS. We are a superb service in the UK. But if our health dollar, or I should call it health pound, certainly not health euro, is going to mean something, then we really need to be able to be cutting costs on pharma. If we can manage to cut the costs by using biosimilars, then I think that means we can then look at using the money for further treatments, complementary therapies, living with and beyond cancer, everything that we need to also complement our treatment journey. It's got to be the way to go.